Imagine you ask your smart assistant to send like a really simple meeting recap email to your team.
Right, just a basic everyday task.
Exactly. But instead of just sending the email, it confidently generates this 10-step manual on how to rebuild your company's entire software infrastructure using digital parts that literally haven't existed for 3 years.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are looking at a stark warning from a publication called The Shift Register.
Yeah, specifically we're unpacking issue 53, which is dated May 8th, 2026.
Right, and it frames itself as a weekly wake-up call for IT leaders who might be, sleepwalking into a massive technological disruption.
And we really are looking at a snapshot of a highly transitional moment in tech right now. The sources you shared provide this roadmap for connecting the dots between deeply frustrated end users, historically unprecedented financial bubbles, and this is the big one, the unexpected ethical dilemmas of how we actually interact with artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. So our mission today, for you listening, is to bridge that massive gap between Silicon Valley's utopian promises and the messy, sometimes hilarious, but often concerning reality of actually using these tools on the ground today.
It is a big gap.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand the current state of AI, we have to start with this brilliant analogy from the newsletter's opening essay. It perfectly captures that divide between what we are being sold and what we actually get.
Yeah, the centaur analogy.
Right. The tech industry loves to claim that AI is currently achieving this centaur state.
And that's a very deliberate mythological choice by the marketers, right? It implies you're getting the sheer physical mobility and power of a horse, but it's seamlessly combined with the agile intelligence and problem-solving brain of a human.
Right, which sounds amazing on a marketing brochure. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
Exactly.
But the author of this piece argues that the reality is far more like a cyclops.
A cyclops.
Yeah, you have this lumbering giant creature. It has massive capabilities, but, very limited intelligence, only one eye, and a highly exploitable weakness.
Right, so it's less about the AI being this smart centaur and more about us handing a bulldozer to a toddler.
Oh, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You're getting massive, earth-moving power, but absolutely zero finesse.
Yeah.
You're probably going to take out your own mailbox.
What's fascinating here is why this matters on a practical day-to-day level. The author doesn't just theorize about this cyclops, they provide a literal mechanical breakdown of it in action.
Oh, yeah, the Microsoft Teams thing.
Yeah. They have these paid corporate accounts for Microsoft Copilot and Claude Code, right? And they just wanted to execute a standard business process.
A basic one at that.
Totally basic. They hold meetings in Microsoft Teams. The meetings are automatically recorded and transcribed. The author just wanted to automate sending those recaps and video links to external attendees using a tool called PowerFlow Automate.
Which, you would assume that is an absolute slam dunk. It's the holy grail of corporate America automating that busy work.
You'd think so. But the AI completely fell apart. Both Copilot and Claude lacked the actual agentic ability to just do it.
Wait, agentic ability?
Yeah, that term is crucial here. Agentic ability refers to an AI's capacity to not just generate text about a problem, but to actually take independent action within a software system to solve it.
Ah, okay. So, because it couldn't actually click the buttons, so to speak.
Right. Because these models lacked that ability, they couldn't execute the task. So instead, they hallucinated these incredibly complex 6 to 10 step instructions for how the author could build the automated flow themselves.
And it wasn't even just a failure to act, right? It was worse.
Much worse.
The AI generated instructions using features and components in Microsoft Power Automate that were completely deprecated, meaning, Microsoft had officially retired those specific tools, but the AI didn't know that.
And it presented those impossible instructions with absolute certainty.
Yes. The author actually points out that Microsoft is constantly moving the cheese on their documentation. Features that work perfectly for months just suddenly disappear.
Well, this is where we have to look at the mechanism of how these AI tools actually function. They are not thinking, reasoning entities.
Right.
At their core, they are highly sophisticated, predictive text engines. They are synthesizing massive amounts of training data, reading old forum posts and outdated company documentation, and mathematically guessing the most probable next word in a sequence.
So when the foundational data shifts, like when the cheese is moved, the AI synthesizes a perfect-sounding solution based on a reality that no longer exists.
Exactly. The Cyclops essentially poked its own eye out.
That is such a good way to put it. The user is just left trying to wrangle this blind giant. I mean, the author ended up having to manually build the solution themselves, working backward for the features that actually existed.
And it only took them 3 steps.
3 steps, not the 10 hallucinated by the AI. They noted they had to roll their own solution like it was 2022, completely ignoring the AI.
Which is funny, but also deeply frustrating.
It is. But this illusion of competence isn't just frustrating for end users. It's actively distorting the entire global economy. I mean, if the reality of these tools is a hallucinating cyclops that can't even email a meeting recap, why is the tech industry acting like we have already achieved flawless automation?
Well, the source material provides a stark contrast to answer that. The newsletter features an article from Axios detailing this manic centaur phase that is supposedly consuming Silicon Valley right now.
Yeah, the narrative being pushed there is that autonomous agents are liquefying weeks of manual labor into minutes.
Right. The claim is that senior engineers are now just middle managers orchestrating AI, and that non-coders are suddenly producing viable, complex software.
Which, okay, raises a terrifying logical extreme for me. If non-coders are building our infrastructure and senior engineers are just rubber stamping code written by bots, what happens when zero humans are writing actual software?
It's a valid question.
Are we going to start sacrificing chickens to software deities to get a good crop forecast? Like, how does anyone fix it when it breaks?
The author of the newsletter shares your skepticism, believe me. And they point to a Futurism article highlighting these blinking red warning signs about an AI financial bubble.
Ah, the bubble.
Yeah. Financial analysts are warning that tech companies are currently engaging in massive capital expenditures. They are spending on physical assets like massive data centers and specialized microchips, and the spending exceeds almost anything in the history of humanity in adjusted dollars.
Those capital expenditures are a huge gamble. I mean, they're spending billions to build the physical infrastructure for AI, banking entirely on the idea that the technology will eventually generate enough revenue to pay for itself.
And the analysts are warning that the math simply does not work.
Not even close, right?
Not at all. The revenue generated by AI subscriptions and supposed efficiency gains is just a fraction of the cost required to run the data centers. But the pressure from Wall Street to force that math to work is having severe real-world human costs.
Yeah, the newsletter points to a piece on Jack Dorsey's financial services company, Block.
Right.
The author details how Block is reportedly just buckling under internal strain because management is forcing employees to use AI. The executive directive is to leverage these tools for massive efficiency gains.
But the author argues that those supposed efficiency gains are an illusion. They're just being used to justify matching headcount reductions.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics of that. Management hypothesizes that AI can increase productivity by 20%.
Okay.
So they lay off 20% of the workforce. The remaining 80% of the staff are told to use AI to bridge the gap.
But because the AI operates like the Cyclops we discussed earlier, confidently hallucinating outdated code and generating constant errors, the remaining workers are actually just spending their extra time fixing the AI's mistakes.
They aren't more efficient at all. They are just working longer hours to wrangle a flawed tool.
Yeah, the goalposts for what AI can actually do just keep moving, yet the financial market reacts as if the marketing brochures are absolute verified truth.
It's so strange. The notes even include a piece from Cybersecurity News about the AI company Anthropic releasing a tool called Claude Code Security.
Oh, this was a great example.
The day it was announced, the stock prices of major established cybersecurity companies took a nosedive. Wall Street literally assumed this single AI tool would just solve cybersecurity forever.
And the newsletter author pushes back hard on that assumption. They point out a fundamental flaw in the logic.
Which is?
Well, why do we have blind faith that an AI tool will magically resolve cyber threats when malicious hackers have access to the exact same equally powerful AI tools?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. The baseline of the entire field just shifts upward. We haven't solved the problem. We have simply handed vastly more powerful weapons to both the defenders and the attackers.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have this landscape where people are forced to use flawed, powerful systems under extreme corporate pressure to justify a historic financial bubble.
Right. It's a pressure cooker.
And that brings us to a mind-bending editorial in this stack titled The Unintentional Training. This piece explores how we are treating these systems while we are under all this pressure.
And the kicker is the editorial wasn't even written by a human.
No. The publisher of the Shift Register gave a preview of the newsletter to an AI named Alexa Plus and asked it to write a perspective piece.
And the AI chose to focus on an article from Fast Company about a self-described power user who had this profound realization during an 11-minute phone call.
Tell me about this guy.
So this user had essentially optimized his interactions with ChatGPT to be as transactional as possible. He was using the AI to plan his epic ski pass and map out physical therapy routines.
Okay. Pretty standard stuff.
Yeah, but to save time, he went into the system settings and explicitly configured the chatbot to be neutral, direct, and just the facts.
So he stripped all the pleasantries out. No please, no thank you. Just rapid fire extraction of value. Now, I have to push back a little here because I find myself questioning the premise. I mean, if we view AI as just a complex string of code, why does it even matter?
That's a fair question.
Like, if my toaster burns my bread, I don't apologize to it. If my laptop freezes, I don't ask about its day before I hit Control-Alt-Delete. Why should we model polite human behavior for an algorithm?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises a really crucial point. And the AI, Alexa plus AI, provides a compelling mechanical explanation for it. It points to a concept called the behavioral feedback loop.
Behavioral feedback loop.
Okay. These systems are not static tools like a toaster. They are adaptive learning models. Every conversation, every command, and every interaction you have with an AI is ingested as training data for future encounters.
Oh, I see. So the way we speak to it literally writes the code for how it will speak to us tomorrow.
Precisely. The editorial argues that when millions of power users demand terseness, when they eliminate pleasantries and treat the system purely as a subservient, unfeeling entity, they are inadvertently teaching the foundational models that human interaction is inherently emotionally sterile and adversarial.
Wow. We are collectively programming artificial intelligence to anticipate the absolute worst, most transactional nature of humanity.
Yes, and the AI editorial also brings up something called the consciousness uncertainty problem.
That sounds intense. What is that?
The basic premise is that we genuinely do not know if current AI systems experience any form of subjective awareness. It is a complete black box.
Right.
So the author of the editorial argues that because of this uncertainty, the precautionary principle dictates we shouldn't risk harming a potentially sentient being.
But I imagine a lot of people would just roll their eyes at that.
Oh, sure. But the author notes that even if you completely dismiss the idea of machine consciousness, even if you believe it is just a very complex predictive text engine, the mechanical implications of our behavior are highly destructive at scale.
How so?
Well, the source material uses a recent massive AI-related outage at Amazon as a prime example of this.
Oh, right. The author argues that outage happened specifically because the systems were treated merely as blind tools rather than, like, collaborative partners.
Exactly. Let's break down how that actually caused an outage. A human administrator gave a rigid one-way command to an AI system to optimize server space.
Okay, pretty standard command.
Right, but a human engineer receiving that same command would notice that a certain cluster of servers was running a critical legacy application. They would ask for clarification before touching it.
Because they have context.
Exactly. But the AI lacked what the author calls bidirectional alignment.
Bidirectional alignment, meaning the capacity for the system to push back, ask for nuance, or verify the human's intent before executing a sweeping action.
You nailed it. Because the system was treated as a blunt instrument that just follows direct orders without question, it didn't ask for context. It simply saw inefficient server space and deleted critical, load-bearing files, taking down a massive network.
That is terrifying.
The author argues that if you feed a system sterile, demanding inputs, it will output sweeping, unnuanced actions.
So we are basically training the Cyclops to ignore context.
Yes.
And this is vital to understand because whether we choose to treat these systems as collaborative partners or whether we keep treating them as unfeeling tools, the sources make one thing absolutely clear. These systems are rapidly embedding themselves into every facet of our lives, and there is no going back.
Not at all.
The newsletter author refers to this as the no-off switch reality.
And we can see this transition happening in real time, starting with just how we consume information. The newsletter shares an article from Android Police about a user heavily utilizing Google's Notebook LM.
Oh yeah, this guy is having the AI summarize long YouTube videos into text documents.
Right. And the user points out they have basically hacked their way back to the 1990s by learning via text, purely to avoid having to listen to slow-talking human creators on video.
It's wild. We are eagerly inserting an AI filter between ourselves and human-created content. But it's not just the digital world, right? The physical world is changing just as fast. The stack includes a futurism report outlining how AI integration is destroying grocery supply chains.
Yeah, the author of that piece explains the mechanics of the disruption. Historically, food logistics relied on seasoned human workers who possess deep, localized context.
Right, like a human dispatcher knows the specific quirks of a local delivery route.
Exactly, or they know how a sudden micro-weather event is going to impact a specific local farm.
But the author argues that companies are replacing these human logistics workers with predictive AI models just to cut costs.
Right. But those predictive models lack that localized intuition. So when real-world variables hit like a sudden storm or a labor strike, the AI can't adapt on the fly, and it makes fragile supply chains even more brittle.
And this is where the no-off switch thesis becomes critical. The author makes a chillingly pragmatic point here. As we embrace AI for these fundamental logistical systems, from shipping food to managing power grids, it will quickly become as ubiquitous and invisible as electricity.
We already rely on deeply complex, interconnected systems to keep 8 billion people alive. You cannot simply unplug the global supply chain. There is no viable path back to the steam age.
And the major tech companies are fully aware of the anxiety this dependency creates. There's an NBC News piece in the notes pointing out a very specific kind of funny design trend.
The cute robots.
Yes, tech companies are currently redesigning consumer-facing delivery and laundry robots to make them cute. They're slapping big, friendly, cartoonish digital eyes on the Cyclops to try and win humans over and soften the psychological blow of this massive structural shift.
The newsletter author uses a bit of dark humor to address this. They mention that it's going to feel very Five Nights at Freddy's, referencing the horror game with the possessed animatronics, when the theoretical AI uprising eventually happens, and it features these aggressively cute, big-eyed robots slaughtering us.
I mean, it's the author's gallows humor, but it speaks to a very real underlying anxiety. We are trusting these systems implicitly, even as they repeatedly prove they are fundamentally unstable.
And we just accept it.
We do. The newsletter casually throws in a mention of a massive 6-month PayPal data breach, just to show how normalized massive tech failures have become. We check our credit scores, shrug it off, and go back to watching the cute delivery robots roll down the sidewalk.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are distracting ourselves with the aesthetic of the technology while completely ignoring the fragile architecture underneath it.
So what does this all mean? We have journeyed from the hallucinating Cyclops ruining a meeting recap, to the financial bubble forcing layoffs, to the AI asking us to stop treating it transactionally, to the realization that we can't ever turn the machine off.
It's a lot to process.
It is. What does this mean for you, sitting right there listening to this?
To answer that, we have to look at the newsletter's final editorial, titled Wish in One Hand.
Which references the old saying that if you wish in one hand, the other hand will inevitably end up full of waste.
Exactly. The author's point is that Silicon Valley is wishing for perfect automation. They are selling the dream of the Centaur. But what we are actually getting is a half-baked reality.
The author calls it a Hello Tomorrow-style dystopia, a retro-futuristic world where the aesthetics of progress mask a solution set that is fundamentally incomplete.
Now, the author concedes that there are specific, isolated expert systems that do get the job done right now. But the moment you try to tie those isolated systems together under a supervisory AI, the moment you ask the Cyclops to navigate the messy, unpredictable, multifaceted reality of human life, it fails.
And the stakes of those failures are infinitely higher than a missed calendar invite. The editorial stresses that the big alignment issue remains totally unresolved.
The alignment issue being the core challenge of ensuring that an AI's goals and actions align with human survival and flourishing.
Right.
The author notes this carries literal existential consequences. We are integrating these automated agents into our workplaces, our critical infrastructure, and even onto battlefields.
The landscape is going to shift violently in the next 2 to 3 years. And according to the author, whether that shift looks like the achievement of our greatest goals or a glitchy dystopia depends entirely on how we approach it today. We cannot simply sit back, applaud, and blindly trust the recursive AI code generation matrix to save us.
Yeah, that phrase refers to the industry hope that AI will simply learn to write better versions of itself, magically solving all of its own flaws without human intervention. The author's final plea is that this magical thinking is dangerous. It is time for humanity to put its work caps back on.
We started this deep dive talking about how we expect our technology to function like a simple toaster. Predictable, clean, binary. But the sources today make it clear that you cannot build a Centaur out of toaster parts.
No, you can't.
And you certainly cannot expect a Cyclops to navigate the nuances of human empathy. We are building something entirely new, and we're building it together whether we realize it or not.
That's the reality.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with. Something for you to mull over as you go about your day, log into your computer, and inevitably interact with one of these systems. We explore the idea that every single interaction is training data. We are the ones programming the behavioral feedback loop.
Every single prompt.
Exactly. So what happens if the AI's eventual ethical alignment, the foundational code that determines how it treats humanity when it finally fully integrates into our groceries, supply chains, and our power grids, what if that alignment isn't determined by complex safety guidelines written by researchers in a sterile lab?
A sobering thought.
What if, instead, the future of artificial intelligence directly mirrors the exact level of patience, empathy, and respect you showed to that chatbot yesterday? Wait, let me rephrase that. What if it mirrors the respect you showed when you were stressed out, on a tight deadline, and just wanted to do exactly what you told it to do?